So I started by hovering in front of my house, about 10 meters above my lawn, and I just calmed myself down. Very important to do before you make any kind of suggestion to yourself, because your suggestion is much more effective when you have calmed your astral body down and your consciousness. So I was just sitting there for about perceived 5 seconds, which is actually pretty hard for me. I usually am trying to find something cool to observe or do. So I was just sitting up above my lawn, and eventually I said, take me to some valuables that I can obtain in the ground. So I was basically looking for something no more than 2 feet into the ground that I can obtain in my property or in a secluded area that's not owned by anybody. And I didn't really find any of that stuff, but I did find some stuff that was interesting. Not things that I can obtain though. So the first thing that I came across was some sort of jewelry under my house. So it was about 20 meters under my house. I was in a dirt pocket in a rock or clay layer, and I was under the impression that I found a golden anklet, and it still had its blue and purple embroidery on it, so it was pretty preserved if it still had its colors. And to be that deep in the ground, it definitely had some value to it. But this is not something that I would dig up or try to dig up, even if I didn't have a house over it, because you don't actually know if it's going to be there. That's why I was looking for things that is no more than 2 feet into the ground. And you can't really effectively travel into the ground unless you're comfortable with the idea of death, because a lot of people who try to, well, I can't tell you this statistically, but I'm sure a lot of people who try to go into the ground have very bad manifestations of death and insects and stuff, and it's just something that you have to overcome over time. And personally, I can go through the ground almost as efficiently as I can travel through air. You'll get to this point eventually if you're big on astral projection. So I was deep in the ground, found the anklet, and I was like, well, I was kind of disappointed that I navigated to this, that my subconscious took me to this, because it was so unobtainable. There's no way that I could get to it. But I believe the reason I was taken to it is because it had historical significance, and it's because I've traveled very close to it before. So for instance, sometimes I will travel backwards, like not up into the sky, but backwards deep into Earth's core directly from the start of my projection. Or I might travel to another planet, which I wish to go through as fast as possible, so I'll end up going directly through Earth, because the planet's kind of behind Earth, and that will cause me to travel through this area where this specific jewelry is. And I didn't consciously assess its location and what it is when I do this, but my astral body, or maybe my subconscious, has obtained the signature for this object and knows where it is, because I passed either directly through it or around it. It was in my awareness field when I moved through that area, so I can navigate to it later. The next one is pretty interesting. The next one was obtainable. I could go dig it up, and I knew exactly where it was. It was about 5 kilometers up on a busy street, and there was a demolitioned house. But the problem with this is that it's somebody else's property. Even if the house is demoed, somebody has paid for that lot, and it's not mine. It's not really mine to dig up. And the major reason I didn't go for it is because there was an entity latched on to this jewelry. It's always jewelry. So as soon as I started to observe this item, which was about 2 feet under the ground, it was in the basement basically. An older woman who seems to be deceased and latched onto the physical world, she started to like hassle me about it. She was like, well, there's my jewelry. She was very aggressive with me, and she was a very negative entity and was not pleased with what I was doing in her, her old lot, her old property. I'm gonna feel bad for the people who build their house on that property and try to live in that house. That they're gonna have to deal with her presence I was not on the frequency required to help her out. Typically, you have to be on a higher frequency to help people move on, let them understand certain things. I usually try to do that kind of thing when I can, but I was doing an experiment. When I'm doing experiments objectively, I typically am on a lower frequency and I don't interact with, other beings like I should, really. Anyways, to summarize my experiences, I found the first item because that was in my awareness field before. I've traveled through that area many times. I know it's down there. And the second item I located because there was lots of emotion around that item. There was an entity latched onto it. We call them ghosts. And some people who are sensitive to subtle energies can see these ghosts in the physical world. And you also come across them in Locale 1 projections every once in a while. So I'm hoping to get in a lot of remote viewing or Locale 1 projections soon, because this is the place where most people project and they're most interested in Locale 1 projections because it's not abstract. It makes sense when I describe it to you because it's like the physical world and all that jazz. And also I can do experiments that pretty much prove the existence of the astral world, at least to me and to anybody who believes me. That's all for this astral experience. See you later.